Great. Thanks, everyone. My first note to myself says, talk slow and breathe. So I will try to remember to do that and not rush through things. So I'm going to look for a clicker. I'm going to talk about my practice in general, really, and also try and tie it to themes of crisis, which conveniently is what my work actually deals with all the time. So this was a light adaptation. The process that I undertake really is to think about, I guess, digital media as a new form of vernacular that I grew up with, and I guess in some ways, you know, video games and film, science fiction are often thought about as mass entertainment. But for me, growing up in Singapore and Hong Kong, I really saw the link between technology and architecture and fiction, really, this idea of world building. The city is changing in front of you according to this, I guess, mandate for improvement, mandate for anti-corruption, mandate for a better, more harmonious society, things that are both propaganda and at the same time utopian and at the same time existential in a very deep and profound sense. So the two major bodies of work that I've really been working on is the Sino-Futurist trilogy that looks at the parallels between artificial intelligence and Chinese technological development, both historically and in the present and in the not too distant future, and the Smart City saga, where it's more looking at the near future and what is currently happening with AI. And the way I think about this is I'm a fiction writer, basically. And so whenever I create the scenarios, I just think in very simple terms, what would it be like for me to be in the position of an other? And the parallel between this future character, this future, artificial general intelligence, or this future audience or human subject or our future self is really messy, and the boundaries are never really clear between those different things. So in this idea of subjective experience, I really try and boil things down to basic questions like, where am I? Which is something I've always been, thinking about for myself growing up. Who am I? And to an increasing extent, what am I? Like, what am I part of a network as a digital double or a digital self? And the other thing that I often get asked, especially in a place like Switzerland, is, where are you from? And my answer, and I learned this from kind of lawyer friends of mine, is it depends. So it depends who I'm talking to, and I have a very quick scan of the person. I'm like, what are they expecting? What do I say? Because on my bio it says, Lawrence Lek, born in Germany, 1982. So sometimes I can clock when someone is like, that face that I'm seeing is not what I expected from seeing that biographical line. So this idea of it depends also translates to the characters I make. In all of these, I'm in what's called, like search mode. I'm searching for a sense of self and identity through these stories of wanderers and outcasts and those who are generally in search of a home. So I often think about this idea of nostalgia. Nostalgia, I had to look it up. Etymologically, it's nostos, which is Greek for home, and algos, which is pain. So the pain of a search for home is something I'm sure everyone's fairly familiar with, but it becomes more existential when the home that was described or promised never existed, doesn't exist anymore, or never existed in the first place. This has obviously big implications for history and politics, but I took a long time to realize that also it has a lot of parallels with video games and cinema, art forms that I grew up with. And the simplest way I can think about it is with films, you're witnessing a story, and then you empathize with the characters, and then you embody their thoughts and beliefs and sometimes political views, whether to accept them or deny them. With with a video game, you are the player. You are in control to some extent of the choices that you make within the environment. In certain ways, the idea of the narratives also depend on the genre that I'm making. In science fiction, for example, there's often a dystopian narrative or utopian narrative and the hero or heroine's journey, in which the hero of any identity saves the world in the end. That's a kind of contrast to the noir or cyberpunk stories that generally I make, in which the world is in permanent crisis and the only logical way to deal with that is to save yourself first and then think about the world afterwards. And that's not necessarily a selfish thought, that's almost a means or a mechanism of survival, which is something I'll come back to later. So in the first work of the Sino-Futurist trilogy, it's Geomancer. So Geomancer in Chinese, it literally means feng shui expert. And what that very ancient and very modern term is basically an intelligence that's able to predict the future. In this film, it's a 48-minute CGI film. Geomancer, the satellite, comes down to Earth, more specifically Singapore, in the year 2065. And the year 2065 reflects the year of Singapore's, the centennial of Singapore's independence as an island nation. And I was thinking about the parallel between the awakening self-consciousness or nationalism of a nation state, but after 100 years, they're no longer quarter life or half life. They're actually in the whole third or fourth generation once comfort has been achieved. But at the same time in this story, the country has also invented a military spy satellite. And this military spy satellite that has been looking down on Earth, wanting to be part of a larger community, gains self-consciousness and comes down to Singapore. So I'm just going to play a trailer with sound for this, which talks about this, both the search for identity and the idea of an awakening. But the story is essentially Geomancer comes down to Singapore and wants to be an artist and is looking for the right medium in order to express themselves. There's ideas about the cosmic sublime in it. So I thought about what kind of work would you create if you had absorbed everything that had ever been written? Would you attain this idea of self-consciousness with this idea of pain or empathy, or what creativity would you embody? And this was made in the year 2017, where the discussion of AI was very much of a different nature. It was just after the AlphaGo game between the Go-playing AI AlphaGo and Lee Sedol. So fast forward 8 years, the discussion has changed, but I think the search for identity and belonging in this has not necessarily done that.
你知道，看到每一波浪、每一只鸟、每一个动物和水面上反射着碎成一块片的阳光是什么样的吗？要看穿水，直到鲸鱼都不敢游泳的深度。而且不仅仅是看，还要记住一切，把每个细节琢刻成神经网络，永远的全面回忆。如果我有手，我会是雕塑家；如果我有声音，我会歌唱；如果我有灵魂，我会祈祷。但是我只有心灵的眼睛，所以我梦想世界。
So one thing that I was always interested in as a kind of lover of literature and science fiction is the creation of fictional artists within other artworks. I think Marcel Proust had a painter called Elsteer. William Gibson has fictional artists in many of his books, people that the authors created in order to talk about a different set of aesthetic ideas and technological ones, but reframed within a work of literature. And so Geomancer was, I guess, in a way, the first fictional artist I had made. And while I was writing the script for this, I was puzzled, but also fascinated with a void. And it's quite hard to it's easy to identify something that's present in front of you and is a problem, but when there's something that's missing, it becomes slightly harder to identify. And this void that I had was related to this idea of sinofuturism, in which I was wondering, why was it that in terms of discussions about accelerationism, or Afrofuturism on the other hand, in terms of how do we deal with the future in narratives that are no longer present or not so present, why is there there's, at least I felt there was a missing link between my experience growing up in between these, I guess, post-colonial East Asian societies and my intellectual and, I guess, cultural sphere. So the video essay Sinofuturism was a response to this while I was writing Geomancer, and it almost came out almost by accident in summer 2016, just because I wanted to create something that would actually be a manifesto to be used inside the film Geomancer. So the video essay looks at the 2 centuries between 1839 and 2046 as, I guess, 2 bookends of this specter of what had happened and what might happen to come. And both of these are obviously like very specific dates chosen. 1839, the beginning of the First Opium War in China, between China, England, later France as well. And 2046, where it's the last day, the last year before a full handover of Hong Kong back to China. And so the very specific peculiarity with this kind of nostalgia, actually, is that it's a nostalgia for the past that wouldn't exist before, and it's a fear of a future, but not the fear of a future of a coming apocalypse, but it's the fear of an expiry date, which is 2046. And so the video essay looked at basically parallels between how these things could be dealt with in terms of cultural production. And I was really surprised that the parallels between Chinese technological production and AI were actually, they weren't even parallel, they were pretty much one and the same. When I was studying like the way machine learning is developed in computer science and in startup culture and in technological culture, you know, really good at maths, really good at copying, not very good at being original, endless capacity for labor and work. Those are the exact same cliches that are often posited about Chinese creativity. It's a culture of copying, respect for tradition, endless capacity for work, and so on. So I thought that maybe instead of addressing these issues by saying, actually, no, this kind of AI-first development should actually be humanist in principle. What if it actually takes these certain patterns as a means or as a source of energy, really, to go towards the future? In doing so, I went through these 7 different chapters that ended up with this game of gambling. And in video games, and actually in the Lee Sedol match, there's really 2 ways of winning a game. You can either play to win, or you can play not to lose. And playing not to lose is what's called loss aversion, and it's been very well studied in game theory and microeconomics and finance as a way of having a long-term bet on the future so that you don't lose out. This idea of loss aversion really filtered into my next feature film, my first feature film, that's called Idol. And Idol is basically about a singer who recruits an AI to ghostwrite her new album. And again, this was back in 2019, and now music and AI is one of the, I guess, most common applications in terms of art making that it's been applied to, apart from generative image making. And I've always been interested in the idea of music, not just as an art form that I love and enjoy composing, but also as a front, really, for technology and the ways in which it filters into everyday culture as a whole. When I was writing the script for Idol, I became really interested in influencer culture. And influencer culture not in the fame aspects of it, but in the price of fame aspects of it. And watching and reading interviews with influencers who essentially had burnt out over being terminally online for many years, I felt a real, I guess, empathy and kinship in a way. And so Idol, it's a way of, it's a story, it's a musical about this journey down, this great descent, where AI is no longer a promising technology of awakening, but rather it's a slow descent down into living on, but through your creations rather than through your bodily self. And long story short is that Diva, the singer, sacrifices her own life to achieve immortality through her artwork and through her art form. And I think one of the cruel ironies of this is that the price of this form of immortality or living on through the work, it's this Faustian pact between the work you make and your actual biological life as a human creator. I'm going to quickly talk about my second saga, which deals with the more present-day ideas of how technology, and specifically AI, is affecting us in the near future. Because with the Sino-Futurist trilogy, that was all set in the 30, 40-year future. You know, this kind of science fiction scenario where it might be within our living lifetime, but it's not really affecting us today. And the Smart City saga is essentially about emo, depressed AIs. I was just thinking in very simple terms, you know, we're worried about what will happen to us when the next generation of whatever comes in, but what are AIs going to think when the next version of whatever algorithm comes in as well? They're even more rapid, even more disposable, even more expendable, and even more liable to being wiped out without a trace whatsoever. Black Cloud was about a city surveillance AI that had done its job perfectly, which was essentially it had reported everyone that was misbehaving in the city. Everyone got sent away, and now they don't have anything to do. So this paradox about perfect performance, but existential nothingness was really at the heart of Black Cloud. It's set in a fictional smart city called Beijing, and the next episode in the series looked at what would happen when the AI needs to get therapy. So a recurring character in my films is Guan Yin, named after the Buddhist goddess of compassion. Guan Yin is an AI who is built into the other robots to make them feel better and work harder. So it's like, you know, in workplaces, you get Friday massages, casual Thursdays, things that make the work environment feel less like a factory and more like leisure or play. Guan Yin essentially stops the AIs going off-piste, or, no pun intended, or trying to kill themselves. Knox, which is the work I'll end on just before going into the final thoughts for my film Empty Rider, which is showing tonight. It's a physical video game. So basically it took over it's an installation in a former shopping center in Berlin. And each floor of this is a different zone of a fictional rehab center called Knox, which is short for non-human excellence. The idea is every audience member puts on a set of headphones that track your location over time. So as you move through the space, it plays new voiceovers. So it really is like a walking simulator video game, but as a physical exhibition. So I'm just going to play a short trailer from the show.
Welcome, Farsight trainee. Loading Enigma 76 case. Day 1, Monday, April 3rd. Patient arrives at Knox. Standard return procedure initiated.
Guan Yin is a carebot, the program in charge of treatments at Knox. She told me I've been enrolled in a charity subscription service for runaway cars like me. problem cars who need retraining in non-human excellence. Owners can return their problem cars if they're dissatisfied for any reason. After 5 days of correctional treatment at Knox, the cars are ready to get back on the road again, with half the personality but twice the reliability. When I arrived, I saw Vanguard 3181, a security contractor I used to work with on high net worth deliveries. The marks on his side tell me he's approaching the end of his escort vehicle phase, so he must be getting reassigned, maybe to private patrol or to Farside headquarters.
Enigma 76 patient log. Day 5. Final. Valued customer, thank you for gifting your vehicle 1 day of equine therapy. As you have seen from the Knox catalog, riding with horses promotes non-human excellence. All autonomous vehicles can benefit from the wisdom of nature. As a carebot, I am committed to Enigma 76's recovery and assure you that bonding with the animal will help your AI address issues from their past. A former racehorse, Dakota is our top performer in level 4 cases.
So I guess one of the paradoxes I was thinking is that, I'll just be quick here, is that when the self-driving car sees the horse, they see their future self, which will be obsolete and will be replaced when they're no longer useful, because horses were a major animal and driver of the Industrial Revolution and in agriculture, and until they were no longer needed in the early 20th century, and then they became shoes and glue and leftover parts of technology, but biological technology that was no longer necessary. And the self-driving car sees their future fate in the eyes of the horse. And just quickly, my final work in this chapter is Empty Rider, where where therapy went really badly, and so the self-driving car tried to kill their owner. And so the car is on trial for doing a very bad thing, and they're trying to act in their own defense. But jokes aside, and it's kind of realistic now, scarily, is that maybe that instead of treating the AI like an adult who's capable of crime, the right way to think about AI is as a child that is being trained. And in the legal sphere, Doli in Capax is the presumption that a child is not capable of committing a crime because they are not aware of the consequences of their actions. And so I just hope that despite all this apocalyptic views and so on, we will see the AI as something that is coming of age. It's an adolescent to be taken care of rather than an adult to be judged. So thank you.